Okay, we'll jump into it. So, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's having an amazing weekend. As you can tell already by now, that I have decided to do this webinar for free, just for this one time, limited time. Typically, these are for the annual and lifetime users, but I've just been noticing or seeing a lot of people that they are in the community or even outside of the community, just in the trading community in general. They've just been trading a lot of these consolidation tickers, trading while there's absolutely no volume in the options chain, and they're just getting chopped up and wrecked because of this low volume and some of the consolidation moves. So the webinars over the last 2 weeks, they have been primarily focused on that exact topic, and it's to find or identify consolidation and kind of identify the difference between consolidation and the expansion. So how to identify when the ticker is consolidating, and how to identify when it's flipping from that consolidation to expansion. So those are some of the main topics that we have been discussing over the last few weeks, and they're very, very important for day traders. That's why I've been doing these whole webinars completely dedicated towards these exact topics. So I'm going to bring them up again in this webinar, and we'll cover some of the main things. But overall, if you haven't heard of the Strat, it's an options trading strategy, or just an overall strategy in the market. That's a candlestick reading pattern that repeats itself over and over again. So it's been going on. It's a strategy that's been developed and used for decades now. It's not something that I've made myself, but it is made by Rob Smith. If you haven't heard of him, you can do your research. I do talk about it often. But it's an amazing trading strategy that revolves around candlesticks in the market. So obviously the stock market is filled with candlesticks on the daily, weekly, monthly, whatever time frame, but there's a pattern that repeats itself over and over again, and it's the strat. So if you can identify the strat, you can kind of identify or pinpoint where that consolidation is happening and kind of where that flips into expansion, which is really the main important kind of obstacle for options traders and day traders to identify that kind of flip point. So if that's something that you've been kind of struggling or dealing with yourself, hopefully this webinar helps. And I'm going to be honest with you, this one session alone isn't going to change anything in terms of your trading. You are going to have to, put in the work, go do some overtime after this webinar. But that's just me being honest with you guys. So we'll jump into it here. You guys should be able to see my screen right now. And that's just the PDF webinar we've been kind of using over the last few weeks on how to spot these explosive moves using the strat and the whale tracking. So we're going to jump into it here. Let me just look at this here. All right, sweet. So before I get started, in this webinar, we're going to be covering, like I just said, some of the main points that we have been covering recently in terms of the strat. And then we'll also talk about one of the main things, which is how we identified the entry, or how we even identified the stock or Microsoft to be the top watch this week. How we identified that last week during the webinar. If you guys, the ones that were the annual lifetime users, if you guys remember the end of that webinar, I quickly told you guys one ticker that I'm really liking for next week, and we broke it down here on the stream together. And that was the one ticker that we stuck to last week and ended up making that explosive move, which we've been seeing over the last few weeks. So 2 weeks ago we had or 3 weeks ago we had the Apple setup, double inside bar breakout to the upside. We had the LLY set up 2 weeks ago. That was the double inside bar again, breakout to the upside, explosive moves. And then last week after the LLY webinar, I told you guys that the Microsoft is the top watch going into next week, and we had that breakdown. So that's some of the main things I want to talk about here as well. And another main thing is the kind of flip on the market conditions as well. So we had a bullish setup for the last few weeks. We've been seeing the market kind of just rip upside. But last week we actually had a bearish start. So even though the bears didn't have, the whole week, by end of week, we did kind of favor the bulls again. We definitely had a bearish start to the week, and the market was kind of flipping and favoring or paying out the bears, the bear traders. The bulls were getting wrecked in the start of the week, so we're going to be covering exactly how to avoid being a perma bull, or just reading the market conditions in general to know which side you need to be biased on. So that's one of the main topics, and then obviously how to hold the explosive setup targets for the targets. Sorry. So the last few weeks I've been covering this as well, is how to hold on to these setups. Once we get identify the explosive setups, you know that there's a setup there, you know that there's smart money positions coming into this setup. So how do you really hold on to the target? So over the last few weeks, since I've been doing these webinars, since I've been covering the system that you can use to hold on to your targets, a lot of you guys have been tagging me with some massive gains on these setups, telling me, it's finally making sense. You can finally understand where the market, shifts, where it gets from that consolidation to expansion, and how you can hold on to your targets now that you understand the system, now that you're understanding the actual market. So it's great to see some of you guys kind of tagging me, telling me, everything's flipping for you. You guys are starting to finally understand it, and you guys are tagging me with some higher percentage gains and higher returns on your profit as well, which is amazing to see. But that really is a main important part that a lot of traders do overlook too, because your losses will definitely outweigh your gains if you're not following a system, because of emotionals and psychological reasons as well. So you see a little bit of gains if you're not following a system. You're just going to think to yourself, I had a loss last trade. Let me just lock in this gain. It's a little bit of gain, and I had a nice trade. And that gain, you could have had the perfect entry for an explosive setup, and you don't even know it that you're on track for that whole move, but you just took a little bit of gain because you personally just don't know how to use the system. You don't know how to identify the targets, and those are some of the things I've been covering recently, and it's starting to make a lot of sense to a few people, which is great to see. So those are some of the things I'll be covering in this session as well. And then one of the main things I talked about that I will be discussing in the webinar is how to avoid the chop using the strat and options data. So this week was a week that you could have avoided a lot of chop, and that was on Thursday. So Thursday, all the indices, Qs, SPY, IWM, and a lot of other tickers on the actual main tech and individuals, they all closed an inside bar. So an inside bar closed daily across the whole board, and you can see that caused a lot of consolidation. Now we were able to identify that consolidation within the first hour, right? Which is it's very important for a day trader to identify that the whole day is going to be filled with chop, and I'll cover exactly how we can identify that later in the webinar as it does get a little bit more, kind of in detail. But those are some of the key things for day traders as well, as to how to identify that chop and stay away from it. So if you had a nice trade on Thursday, that's great for you. But typically, I would say that it's great for you if you had a winning trade, but it's still a bad trade. The reason it's a bad trade is bad because there was no volume in the options chain, and I'll show that here in a bit. But if you're trading and you're still making money while there's no volume in the options chain, I wouldn't really be too proud of it because you're really doing something that's, the smart money, the institution, the algos aren't doing, right? So it'll make sense here once I cover the slides on the specific topics there. And then obviously that'll tie us into how to use the market tide, which I said I'll cover in this webinar as well here. So let's get started with the slides here. So this is the first slide. The ones that are annual lifetime, you guys remember this slide. We've been covering it for the last 2 weeks, but it's why most traders miss the big moves. Now, it's really important we cover this here one more time because it's a really important topic. And the truth is, most people miss the big moves because they see it after it's already started happening, and that's because they aren't tracking where the volume is going before the move happens. So a lot of times before the move happens, if you're able to track the volume, which you guys all have the resources to do, you're able to see where the smart money whales are positioning before the actual move happens. So every single ticker we traded recently, there was smart money positioning into it before the move happened. And it's one of the key reasons it kind of solidifies our conviction and bias as well. So I'll cover one of the examples here just in a bit when we cover our most recent trade, which is Tesla, and you guys will see the kind of options activity that came into Tesla before the move happened by the whales. And another main reason why most traders miss the big moves is because there is no system and there's a lack of preparation. So before I started doing these webinars, before I started talking about the strat, because I realized a lot of people need it, I noticed that there were many people that were using no system. So what no system and no preparation looks like is just coming here at 9:30 and just trying to make a trade, trying to click buttons and making money. Now, I don't know, what kind of imaginary world that is, but it's definitely not going to work. It's not going to work out long term, at least. If it works for you short term, that's great, but it's not going to work out for you long term. You really can't just, open your eyes, click buttons, and hope to make money. You really do need a system and preparation for that. And the system and the preparation itself is going to take you a long time to kind of master and, perfect or sharpen. So that's why I started introducing the strat because it does go from A to Z. It helps you identify which stocks to look at before the market even opens, and it goes all the way into detail into identifying the exact entry point, exact exit point, invalidation points, all that good stuff. So it's really simple to use. It tells you all the tickers you need, tells you entry points and all that stuff as well. So that's why I've been kind of pushing the strat. It's something I mainly use. My whole strategy revolves around it for the last few years, and I've been using it. It's super simple. That's why I don't mind sharing it with everyone here. So that's one of the main things. And when I talk about lack of preparation, it really does mean the people that just, they spend absolutely no time trying to figure out what's going on. So before the Microsoft move happened, I really can't count how many times I said Microsoft is my top watch setup for bearish move, as the whole market is starting to look a little toppy, but Microsoft has been looking the most toppy out of the all tech individuals. It has the weekly setup, it has a double inside weekly bar. And this isn't information that I gatekeep. It's not like, I only told the lifetime and annual. No, I put it out multiple times. It is in the webinar that we covered it live, but I put that information out multiple times throughout, all different platforms, all different kind of areas where even people that are outside of the trading community can see that we're bearish on Microsoft. So when I talk about lack of preparation, it's those people that just come in and say, "Hey, where was Microsoft even posted?" I don't see you guys talking about Microsoft. I don't see a trade alert for like. Really, you really do have to put in the work. I'm sorry if if that was you last week. I'll be honest with you, you didn't put in the work, right? You weren't there when we were planning Microsoft, exact levels on Microsoft. You weren't there when we were talking about Microsoft. So honestly, that's on you. You weren't prepared, and you need to better. You need to do better in terms of actually preparing for the setups and paying attention to the system. That's one of the main things as to why most traders miss the big moves is the lack of preparation and no system. Now, another slide that's I've posted multiple times in the Discord, we've been talking about it on the webinar as well, is what is your objective? So as day traders, it's two key objectives we've been talking about. First one is identifying high probability setups. Now, the strat makes it really easy to identify high probability setups because the whole strat itself has a scanner that can give you the same results every single day. And when we have the same results every single day, and it's a profitable strategy, you're gonna automatically have these high probability setups, right? Well, the strat gives you the inside bar scanners. You take the list and you just kind of do your due diligence on that. The next main objective for options traders, and this is the main important one that I talk about a lot, is to really identify the consolidation versus the expansion. So I always say this, but a stock can only be doing one of two things. It can either be consolidating or it can be expanding, right? Typically, when you see an expanding move, when you see an explosive move on the market, look back and see what happened before that explosive move. And we'll cover a few slides here on the stream as well. Sorry, excuse me. So we'll cover a few slides here on the stream as well, but identify that consolidation versus expansion. You can see every single time we had expansion, we had consolidation. And a stock can either be only doing one of two things. And as a day trader, you really need to identify which one is doing, right? You can't just be there clicking buttons and guessing, is it consolidating, is it expanding? It's really easy to identify which one is doing. And that's the main kind of flip that you need to identify because that's where the day traders make the money, when it goes from consolidation to expansion. That's when the breakouts are happening. That's when all of Twitter, all of X, all of Reddit, all of Discord is talking about one ticker. That's too late. It's already went from that consolidation to expansion. You missed kind of, getting your whole preparation going while it was consolidating. And hopefully by the end of this webinar, you're able to kind of identify which stocks are consolidating versus expanding. So we'll skip some of this stuff for now. Apple, obviously, if you haven't, I'll just do this quickly. If you haven't used the Strat, it's really easy to use. It's just inside bar setups. I have a few videos on it. I won't spend too much time going into it here because I've done it a few times already. But the Strat is a really simple strategy. It's just inside bar setups. You take the inside bar high. So here's Apple, 205.34. We had a double inside bar high. We take the trade off the break, and you can see that was the explosive move that we traded 3 weeks ago. And here's some of our planning on the Apple setup. So for the other users, you guys have seen this already multiple times. And there's some of the flow on the Apple setup as well. This was the Tesla explosive setups, to double inside on the monthly with some of the flow. And then I will talk about the setups from this week. So like I said, we'll jump into the setups from this week and the bear setups from Microsoft as well. So let me pull that up on the stream right now. Okay. So you guys should all be able to see my Microsoft trading view screen right now. And I'll switch over to the weekly time frame. I was planning on playing a little clip here because fortunately I was able to record myself planning and telling you guys this whole Microsoft setup in detail. I was also able to record myself giving you guys or plotting the exact target levels, where exactly we get those levels from using a system. And then during the week, we actually had the Microsoft setup play out, and I was able to give you guys that recorded clip. So I won't replay it here in the stream. I was planning on doing it just so you guys can all see me preparing for it. For the ones that I didn't get to, but I did post that clip. If you want to take a look at it, it's in the TA channel. I'll post it here again after this webinar. But real quick, what we did is just we went on the weekly time frame at the end of the webinar, and we were looking for one setup that looks really good for next week. So off the scanner, we see Microsoft is one of the few that had an inside bar. So we pull up the time for our weekly time frame for Microsoft. And already from the week prior to that, we were talking about this weekly setup. So long wicks from the top, while the rest of tech, which if we just look at SPY, for example, rest of tech was pushing up. And we can see this Microsoft did have some bearish setup here on the weekly. So I talked about it a few times that the reason I do like the Microsoft for downside the most out of all the other tech is that it has the setup for it, right? So that's the first thing, is the scanner gave this setup to us just primarily off the inside bar close. It was able to put it into a list and give it to us on the dashboard. So if there's anyone in here that doesn't know what scanner I'm talking about, the inside bar scanner, it's a list of scanner that just gives you all the inside bar closes from the previous day. So if a stock closes within that range of that previous candle, it's going to put that ticker on a list, and it's going to be posted on the Discord or on the dashboard, so under the scanner section. But that's off the scanner right here, and all we did was mark the high and the low. So on the stream, I just got on here, and another quick pro tip that I mentioned last week, just for anyone that might not have heard it. Here's a strong magnet, so you don't have to like kill your eyes trying to get the exact level. You just take the strong magnet and snap it right to the high of that candle, which is 532.70. And same thing on the bottom side, you can snap it to the low, and that's going to be 519.08. So those were the exact levels I talked about on Microsoft. And then on top of that, I also said that if we do see a bullish breakout on Microsoft, we could trade it, but I am preferring the downside break on this name. So what we did from that point is, you can see we didn't set upside targets. Obviously, we are leaning bearish bias on this setup. So I talked about how you can pinpoint those targets too. So we just pinpointed the entry points. You guys all saw me do that. It's just the most recent inside bar high and low. On the weekly time frame, we want to see the targets now. So I've said it before. Let me just take all these off actually, so you guys can see me do it again. So I use this horizontal ray for my entry points, and I just like to use the flat line, the all across line for my targets. It just helps me kind of identify the difference between them. So for the target points, instead of using this most recent bar, we want to go for the one before that, and we want to mark the low of that bar, right? And then from that point, I've said it before as well, you just keep going back. So the bar before that is this one, and you mark the low, right? And then you want to go one more, and there's the next low. So those are three targets we did live here on the webinar last weekend. And I pointed these out. And now let's go on to the daily time frame here. So here's the start of the bearish breakdown on Monday. So Monday morning we saw Microsoft break that level, and if we even go on to the lower time frames, you guys know the strategy, you guys know the entry point. So for anyone that doesn't know the entry point, we want to see a 15-minute candle close below the level. So on Monday, what happened was that we actually tested the level, but we kept bouncing off of it for the first few minutes, first half an hour or so. And then we finally got that 15-minute candle close below the level. And from that point, we started seeing the breakdown on Microsoft. So beautiful follow through. Even if you didn't get the exact entry point when it started breaking down, when it closed that first 15-minute candle, there were multiple points where you could have re-entered this position. So you can see the breakdown here, retest of that first key level that we had, 517.55, which by the way, you guys saw me mark out where I got that level from, the weekly lows. And you can see that that was another rejection point right there. And we had another move down to our next target, perfectly to our next target, which was, again, the week low from before that. So 519.44, the next exact level we tapped. So that's another trim spot for us. And then we saw a slight bounce, and then down we go for our next target. So our next target below was 500. And I'll talk about that in a second here as well. But one of the main things I want to talk about is the actual targets. So you can see here from the beginning of this trade, we were able to identify the targets before the stock actually started moving. So we don't need to see the move for us to identify the targets, but we can identify the targets before the actual move happens. And we were able to knock out 2 out of 3 of the targets. I'll talk about that last one here as well in a second, but I'm just showing the weekly time frames here and the targets based off of them. So perfect follow through on this Microsoft setup, bearish setup to follow on the start of the week, and we saw the whole market turn around with this setup as well. So that brings me to my next topic. What I've been discussing for the last few weeks is I've seen a bunch of traders try to jump in front of this moving train, which is the bullish run on the market. The market has been ripping up higher and higher for the last few weeks or last few months, honestly, and many people are trying to just time the top. I don't know why. We have a huge surge and people just think that it's a good time or a good risk reward to start leaning bearish, and they've been getting ran every single time. Even this week, if you kind of let those 2 bearish days really get into your head and you thought the market was going to turn around and crash, they really got you again. And that's something I did talk about this week as well, is that we have a bearish day, we have 2 bearish days where Microsoft and the rest of the market is bleeding out, but I specifically said don't let these 2 days distract you, because we're still in a bullish market long term. These 2 days don't change anything. We're still in a bullish trend on the long term, on the weekly, monthly time frame, and we can easily snap back to all-time highs. And that's exactly what happened on Friday. So luckily, I'm not one of those people that try to time those tops and try to, kind of fight the system, fight the market, and be a hero. So luckily for me, I wasn't ran on Friday, and hopefully a bunch of you guys that have been taking that advice as to not trying to time the market top, we're also saved as well on the bear side this week. But one of the main reasons I'm bringing that up is because when the setups come for bear size setups, you won't need to time the top. You'll already be in a position that gives you kind of that top of the market, and you can follow through with it. So what I mean is this Microsoft. So for example, this week, we finally had some downside days on the start of the week. So you can see this is the start of the week. Again, consolidation for the last week or so. And then this week, we finally had that expansion to the downside. So like I said, every single expansion moves comes from consolidation. And you can see kind of half of last week was all consolidation. And we finally got the move this Monday. But again, back to my point here is that Microsoft setup, we didn't need to time the top. We were looking at bullish side setups for the last few weeks. So we had Apple, Tesla, LLY, Google, all these bullish side setups. But for some reason, we leaned bearish on Microsoft. And that's because the strat tells us. The strategy literally gives us an inside bar, a double inside bar setup with long wicks above. And it can give us this bearish setup. So that's what I mean when I say don't try to time the top. The setup will come to you when it's ready to give you a top kind of setup. And especially one of these main Mag 7 or main tech stocks like Microsoft, you are technically catching the top of the market, but you're just not trying to, be a hero and do it before it's actually ready. The setup's coming to you. You're just following the system over and over again. Same system that you would be using for a breakout on the actual market. So strat bias breakout, same exact thing, but you're just doing the bearish side on it for this time. That's for the Microsoft setup. Hopefully that's making sense to a bunch of you guys. I think most of you guys are just in the main chat. But I'm not really seeing many comments, so I don't know if you guys are typing anywhere else. I'm only looking at the main chat right now, so if you have any questions or anything during this whole webinar, just ask it in the main chat. I'm really not looking anywhere else right now, but let me just see if you guys are talking somewhere else. Oh, I see you guys have been talking in the stream here, stream chat. I'll look through a bunch of these questions here. Okay, one of the questions is what time frame do you use to look for inside bars? So I mainly use these three time frames. That's the daily, weekly, and monthly. There are scanners on them for, to find the consolidation. So you really don't have to do too much work besides after the market closes. Every day you just look at the daily inside bar. And on the weekend, just spend a little bit of time just looking at the weekly inside bars. So that could be Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, whenever. And then on Monday, or sorry, at the end of the month, just look on the weekend, just look at the monthly closes before the Monday opens. So you take some off in the first target, previous week low. Yeah, that's the target. So you do take some off at each target, each weekly low that gets hit. You do take some of your position off. So those are the three targets we talked about this week on Microsoft. So 517.55 was the first, 509.44 was the second, and then 500 was the last. So this trade was again a multiple 100% trade. We were able to hold the trade all the way to the target of 500. It didn't tap 500 exactly, but I'm gonna jump into the next topic here shortly once I read through all the questions on how to hold the strategy or how to hold the explosive setups based on the strategy, and I'll talk about exactly what happened on Friday to invalidate that last leg on Microsoft. What do you use for the scanner? Finviz? No, we have our own scanner on the Ghost board. You can use it in the Discord or you can use it on the app website wherever you are. I'll post a link here if you want it. So there's the link to the scanner. I posted in the chat here, the Ghost board stage chat. What criteria you use for scanning options flow? I'll talk about that in another webinar for the options flow. Mainly just want to talk about the strat and preparation for this webinar here. What is the extra trading view indicator you're using? I'm using the strat by Luxalgo. Okay, so this indicator I'm using is called candle type bracket the strat. It's just the indicator that marks the inside bars and outside bar lows. Um, when you're marking the bottoms for your targets, do you use the bodies? No, you just use the wicks. So always use the wicks included. The strat is gonna always include the wick. Yeah, Jojo. For the weekly setups, you want to use the 15-minute bar close above or below your trigger point, and then for the daily setups, you can use a 5-minute close. So again, another slide or kind of topic that might be redundant for the lifetime and annual users. I've been covering these for the last 2 weeks, but I have seen many of you guys kind of improving or using the strategy or system to hold on to your trades, which is great. If it's something you're still struggling with, even though you have seen it before, I would just try to look at this most recent example that I'm about to put out right now. So I've been saying how to hold on to the trades using a system, and that system comes from the Strat and the EMA system. So EMA system, I only use the 9 and 14 EMAs. I've been using those for years now, and it's the only EMA lines that I use. So 9 and 14 EMA. If you need the indicator for it, again, something I'll post after, you guys can get it. But it's really easy to get the EMA indicator on your trading view or whatever charting platform you use. Once you get the 9 and 14 EMA on there, you want to look at the lower time frames in terms of holding onto your strategy or holding onto your trade for your strategy. So I talked about the hourly and the 30-minute time frame last week when we're looking at the actual inside holds on the above or below the EMAs. So let's go on the hourly time frame here first, and you can see the breakdown on Microsoft. So as soon as we broke down on Microsoft on the hourly, you can see that's the first time we get that flip close below the hourly, and we don't see any more closes back below the hourly EMAs. So every time we come up and retest the EMAs, you can see instant rejections on the price, and the price really is held below the average or 9 and 14 EMA. So you can see on Friday, the Friday was the only time we closed two candles above the 9 and 14 EMA. And I talked about it before, but that's exactly where we would be stopped out. That's the kind of trailing point of this whole strategy on the system on how to hold. So you got the two candle closes on the lower time frames here, and that's where oh, you're not seeing the screen, sorry. All right, you guys should be able to see my trading view now. But here's the hourly time frame. I'll just restart here. So hourly breakdown was on Monday. You can see that's the first hourly candle we get below the EMAs, and you can see we ride that trend below the 9 and 14 EMA. So those are the only two EMAs I use on my stream or on my chart. And you can see that every single time we test these EMAs, we get the instant rejection and hold below the price. And on Friday was the first time we got the two candle closes above. And you can see the price really did not go through any more targets there. That was the invalidation point, and that's where price kind of just stuck on sideways. And even the 30-minute time frame. So I talked about the hourly and 30-minute time frame last week. or last 2 weeks, and let's look at the 30-minute here as well. So Microsoft breaks down, and every time we retest the 914 EMA, it's honestly just a place to be adding the positions, or for traders that missed the initial dump, they're getting into these trades. So for someone that's already riding the position, they're able to hold on to the system, the 9 and 14 EMA system, for us to hit all targets. So you can see the first breakdown here, rejection of that EMA point, also rejection of that previous weekly low, and we can see this just rise the EMA lower and lower without able to close any candle or any two candles above until we get back again on Friday. We get that two candle close, and in this range, this is where we get that invalidation on the whole setup, and we weren't able to hit that 500 target below. So it really, the last two setups that I covered, we were able to hit all targets. So even if you did tune into the last two webinars, I definitely advise you guys pay attention here, because this is going to show you exactly where that system invalidates, and it tells you to get out. And you could have saved a bunch of 100% on your contracts if you didn't want to just hold these on to zero, hoping for that lost target, hoping for that 500 level we're looking at for Microsoft, because the system is telling us to close that position using the 9 and 14 EMA system. All right, guys. So we'll jump into the next point here. I have to switch my stream back, so sorry, just bear with me here. So I talked about the second point here, which is trailing the key levels. So trail the key levels. If the stock never comes back and back to that triggering price, there is no reason to be fully out of the position. So that's what we'll talk about here on the Microsoft setup. Let me switch it back. There's the trading view. So what was our trigger? It was the weekly low. Hopefully you guys are following along. It was a weekly low, 519.08. We got the breakdown of there, and we never came back to 519.08 at all, right? So there really was no reason to close this Microsoft position until we're back above this key level on the Microsoft. Now that we break this next key level, the next weekly low, we can see the price never came back to there as well. We break down from there, but we were never able to reclaim this level. And here we are breaking down from the next level. We're never able to go back to that previous low. And you can see that just keeps happening, right? Keeps happening until we do come up and retest. We do claim that weekly low. So that's exactly the point. You could have taken the trailing. Again, everything is lining up here. We see the EMAs are telling us to get out on Friday. We're seeing the trailing levels are telling us to get out on Friday. And the strat magnitude, we were really close to hitting it on Friday as well. So everything is lining up here. And this is really a great example, because this isn't one of them that are hitting all targets and it's just, for me, simple and easy to explain. And you guys are going to, follow the system. It's one of them that is actually telling you to get out. So that's what I'm saying. I really advise you guys pay attention here, because this is one of the systems that's telling us to get out before that last target was hit, and it could have saved hundreds of percentage on the return. So there's a system kind of telling us to get out on Friday, where all three of these systems, the EMA system, the trailing key levels, and the actual strat magnitude, are all lining up on Friday, telling us to get out. So hopefully this is making sense, where you guys can see first target was hit, we never went back to the previous low. Second target was hit, we never went back to the previous low. The third target we're about to hit, but we did go back to the previous low. So invalidated setup for the last target, and that's why we never were able to hit 500 on Microsoft for the last target. I do wait for the candle close at G-Min, especially on setups that have lower flow. So Microsoft did have some lower flow, and that's why we waited for the 15-minute candle close below. You could always take some starter positions before, especially if you have some great conviction on the trade, on consolidated setup. If you have other catalysts, news, whatever it is, if you have conviction on the trade like this and bias, you can always take starter positions. I've taken starter positions in the first 30 seconds of the market open. But for that full position, I definitely like to wait for the first 5 or 15-minute candle close. That really does help me avoid a lot of fake outs, and I'm honestly grateful for it. It has made me miss some of the moves, but it saved me more times than I have missed moves. So I'm gonna keep following that system over and over again. You just open up the next slide here. All right, we'll switch back to the trading view now. Or sorry, we'll switch back to the webinar here. So how to ride the 914 EMA. I'm sorry, I did this on the trading view. I had a little example here, but this is just an example that I had on the webinar that we covered already in the past few weeks. It's use the 914 EMA on the larger time frame, so that's the hourly and 30-minute, and you can help you identify the overall trend in the short term. So obviously, when we have the trade on the, say for example, daily, the short term would be the hourly 30-minute, helping you identify if it's still in a bullish or bearish trend. As soon as that hourly flips, so the example here would be Microsoft hourly flips on the Friday, and that's when the whole consolidation setup, or sorry, the whole expansion setup went back into consolidation and was invalidated. So I did say I'll cover market type, and this is one of the main important things that I've seen, which is just people trading low options volume chain. And I'll talk about it here, but this is what I posted on what is this on Wednesday? No, Thursday. Thursday market, first 30 minutes into open, we were able to identify a ton of chop on the whole market. And here's me posting an hour into market open is that market tide is saying that we're going to chop today. Now, why did I identify that it's going to chop? Well, you can see on the data there, especially for someone that does use market tide consistently or, on a regular basis, you can see that 5 million on the options chain, that's complete garbage, right? That's not something you want to be trading. But the thing is that we weren't even at 5 million. The peak was at 5 million to trade the contracts options volume was sitting negatives on both call side and bear side. I talked about that a few times over and over again on the voice chat. I left the voice chat early because I'm not going to sit there and waste my time and just stare at price just consolidating on an inside bar in the daily time frame. And I posted it on the Discord as well. So if you can identify consolidation, you're going to save yourself a ton of money in the market. And that was a day to sell spreads. So in the morning on the voice chat, I was just talking about spreads all day with Joe in the morning session. And you can see that whole day, the spreads were the only ones that got paid. If you traded options, you probably got fucked both sides because it really was low volume on the whole chain. And, there's really no momentum. It's an inside bar. It's planned to be pinned, right? The market is pinning that bar inside so it can make an explosive move. I don't like if you don't understand it, I posted the two charts on Friday and Thursday, and I'll put it up on the SPX here as well so you guys can just see it. Here's SPY, or let me do SPX. Here's SPX. Thursday inside bar. This is where the price is pinned, where they kill the options traders, where they pin the price and they take money from the options traders that aren't paying attention. They don't know what the hell's going on. They're stealing your money in this range. And these are the people that are getting paid. They're positioning in the consolidation. They're not doing zero DTs in this consolidation zone. They're positioning for the breakout. And here's the breakout. This is where the traders make money. And you know what? What slide am I on here? Let me switch over to the stream again. So here's the market tide when we were chopping with 5 million on the options chain as peak, and both the call and bearish side, or sorry, both the call and bearish premiums on the negative side of this during the market open or during the, after the first 30 minutes or hour, sorry. And let's jump into the next slide here. And that's the market tide on Friday when we had an amazing range on SPX breaking from 63.90 area all the way up to 64.50 area, right? So a huge move on the SPX, huge move on the indexes across the whole board. Individuals going crazy, and that's where the market makers are making money. But I just want to point your attention to the market tie here, right? Instantly off the open, over 20 million, we break over 100 million, and we actually see up to 300 million on the options chain. So this was very unusual as well. We saw a lot of activity on Friday, but I just want to kind of compare here. I want you guys to look at the market tide on a daily basis and identify, what's an average or what's a good amount of market or a good amount of volume for the options chain. And when I see both calls and premiums negative on the options chain, should I really be trading? Should I be putting my capital somewhere to work for me when, these people with millions of dollars and high convictions are staying away, they're sitting on their hands? And that's something I tried to put a lot of attention to this week. I don't know if you guys saw my messages in the TA channel. I'm just going to bring it up here real quick. Okay, you guys should be able to see my Discord. I don't really stream this too often, but let's see here. So this is the SPX update I gave you guys on Thursday. So as anticipated, the indexes with an inside bar close on the daily time frame. There were many many warnings issued ahead of the Jackson hole. So again, with the market tide, I told you guys the reason as well as to why the options chain is so low, why we have negative premiums on both the call and bear side, and that's because of the Jackson hole event. Told you guys multiple times, even before the week started, that it's an annual event. It only happens once a year, and it is a really, really important event. So we do definitely have potential to see consolidation. So keep an eye on the volume. You guys heard me say keep an eye on the volume almost, every single day before open. We had great volume the whole week up until Thursday. Thursday, we had some of the lowest volume we've seen in a long time, and that really does make a lot of sense, right? Next day, we have Jackson Hole event, the annual event, and we have these whales, these banks, these algos, institutions. They're all sitting on their hands. There's no volume in the options chain. So we'll sit on their hands and wait for the next quality trade as well. So you guys if you're reading the rest of the message here, I've been telling us to watch the volume and watch for some chop. As an options trader, it is really critical to know the difference between consolidation move and expansion move. The explosive moves only happen when we get consolidation like today. So if it wasn't for Thursday, traders wouldn't be paid on Friday, right? And if it wasn't for those people that really don't know what they're doing, they're just there waking up, clicking buttons. If it wasn't for them on Thursday, we also wouldn't be paid on Friday. So we really need to identify when the market is consolidating and who's behind that. If it's really low options volume, it's not the whales, it's not the banks that are there. It's the retail traders that are putting in their money and they're going to be taking that money and transferring it over to the ones that are patient and they can wait for the consolidation break and the expansion move. I always say this, but it is really important you kind of preserve your capital, your mental capital and your actual capital for the next quality setup where the volume will be stepping in for the explosive move. Again, mind like keep in mind here, I did post this on Thursday, right? I told you guys preserve your mental capital and capital for the next quality setup when the real volume steps in for the explosive move. So there's the consolidation. What happens after consolidation? You get the explosive move, right? And for anyone that saved their capital on the day before that, they got paid on Friday, while the rest of the people were just stuck there and they really don't even know what the hell hit them. So hopefully after this, you guys can identify the consolidation and expansion moves. Like I always say this, but it is really important to identify from that consolidation to expansion. And hopefully this whole webinar is helping with that so far. Let me go back to the switch back to the stream here. I'm back on the slide here, how to use the market tide. So follow the wheels, use the market tide feature to get an idea of how much volume is active in the options chain. Here's the market tide from Friday when the markets broke the consolidation and we saw a huge surge on the price. Also supported by huge surge on the call side for the market tide premiums. Let me just read the chats here. I haven't read them for a minute here. I don't know what that means. If you're talking about the pre-market stream or when we do these plannings, I've been doing these plannings for the last 3 weeks. Every single Sunday or the weekend, just we've been doing these planning sessions. I haven't made up my mind if I want to do it consistently every weekend. I'm gonna make up my mind on that soon, and then we can stick to that, or we can figure out the system for that. But recently, I've been doing them every weekend, and regardless, every Monday morning, or sorry, every single day before the market opens, I'm getting on the voice chat and letting you guys know the plan. Very specific to this Microsoft, but how much did you take off at each target? Any rule you have? So I talk about this as well. Is that honestly, you do really need to get an idea of the momentum on the trade. So if you see some strong momentum, if you see some strong flow, you are able to take off, lower amounts so you can hold on for the bigger targets. If there's still flow coming in, if there's still a lot of momentum to the downside. One thing I noticed about that Microsoft setup is that it was showing relative weakness off the open, and the rest of the market wasn't really, pushing up. It wasn't breaking down either, but we saw Microsoft kept breaking down, kept going below that trigger and showing that momentum to the downside. So that's why I kept talking about Microsoft 500 target since Monday or even before Monday, and we were able to get pretty close to it. How to switch to annual, you can just go on the dashboard or on the website. Where can we get, if you want the other webinars that I've done, you would have to be annual or lifetime, and they're available on the dashboard. EMA system on the 1 hour, yeah, mainly on the hourly and 30-minute if you want to use it as a trailing. But I use the EMA system on every single time frame. Wes, my preference on the intraday options Greek, IV, and all that stuff. I always say this, but I really don't care, right? All of them are going to do the same thing. You get at the money, or just $2-3 out the money, and you're planning a breakout on the stock, or let me just use Microsoft for example. We're planning a bearish side setup. You can take 510 puts, you can take 500 puts, you can take 505, 512, and I don't care, right? You just take whatever you want, and you'll get paid. I really don't care about the Greeks too much. Do you have daily calls? And yeah, I have a pre-market stream every single morning. Yeah, there is a video on the GoSport app how to use the dashboard. It's in the channel called GoSport. I'll link it here in a bit after the webinar as well. Kalyan, I just read your message in the main chat. You can email the support or you could just DM me and then I'll get you the support you need for that. Jojo, what's my stop loss if the explosive move reverses? So I'm waiting for this to happen. I'm waiting for an explosive move to reverse on us and invalidate the setup so I can cover it here on the stream for us as well. But so far all these have been playing out, so I haven't really been given the opportunity to share one of those that reversed or failed on us, especially one of these main setups. But I am waiting on that to happen so I can cover it here so we can all kind of be on the same level or same page as to what to do in that situation. But I'll break it down here before it even happens. Use the same exact triggering point with that close back above. So say for example, we use the 15-minute triggering point with that close below, what was the level, 519. So if we close a 15-minute back above 519, take that stop loss. Typically, I find these stop losses to be around 15-20%. And the people that have been trading here for a while, or the people that know me for years, I don't really have a high risk tolerance. It's Not because I can't afford it. I just don't really see the need to have a high risk tolerance when you're trading something where you can use a skill to identify or that exact breakout point. So if you can identify that exact breakout point or breakdown point, you really don't need a high risk tolerance. And the invalidation points, thanks to the strat, it really does keep the invalidation points really tight. And it tells you early on if the setup's going to fail or not. So that's something I really do like about the strat as well. And that's why I suggest it to many people. All right. Thanks for the questions, guys. I appreciate everyone tuning in. I'm just gonna end this webinar off by digging into one setup I like for next week. But hopefully, let me get your opinions on the webinar here today. I hope this really helped a bunch of you guys. I want to see some positive stuff from you guys in the market next week. I want to see you guys holding on to the targets. I want to see you identifying the actual setups. And main important thing is I want to see you guys putting in that work and preparation. Stop looking for spoon feed. I've said it. It's not coming from me. It's coming from traders with thousands, thousands of traders that traded under them and traders that have been in institutions. They've been on Wall Street and they're telling you guys themselves that you really can't be handed something on a silver platter when it comes to trading. You really need to have your own conviction, your own setup, your own preparation, because it doesn't matter who you're taking that preparation from. You really won't have the same conviction if you're not putting in the work yourself. And I'm sorry to be so straight up and straightforward about it. You can't wake up and just come in here at 9:30 and rub your eyes open and do this and expect success, right? Especially for long term. Maybe one day you'll hit a short term target, but it really isn't going to work out from long term. And I'm not telling you that as someone, or I'm not telling you as someone from personal experience. I'm telling you that from people that have been trading the market for decades and they have a lot more experience than me and they've been at bigger levels than me. And that's where this is coming from. Right. So for the people that come in here or the people that are in here, if you left a message in the chat saying, hey, where was Microsoft posted? I didn't see anything on Microsoft, or why is everyone trading Microsoft? I don't see any alerts. I would seriously suggest taking some time, a lot of time actually, because you probably need it to go ahead and take a look at what's going on around you, right? You really need to stop looking for things to be fed or spoon fed to you. So that's some of the main things I want to say in this webinar as well. Is that preparation is really one of the main important things. But I'll jump into the trading view here. Let me just read what you guys said in the chat. All right. Appreciate you guys for the feedback. Yeah, if you found it helpful, I appreciate that feedback. Like I said, I typically do these for the annual lifetime users, which again, honestly, I'll just break it down here as well. Is that some people did say they felt kind of left out or something like that when I said I'll do these for the annual and lifetime users. I want to address this here one more time is that, I've said it before, I've said it, I'll say it again. A lot of people have DM'd me in the past or asked me, hey, Ghost, can I pay you for a one-on-one session? Can we do a one-on-one session so you can teach me something? I don't entertain that. I don't look into that because I don't. First of all, I don't have the time, and second of all, I really can't. I don't have the just the kind of capability right now to focus on one person and give them day-to-day kind of breakdown and then follow up on them only for that one session. So that's why I've been doing these over and over again for the annual and lifetime users because it's not really I'm doing something for them directly. They're the ones that are, noticing the truth behind the market is that the whales are positioning every single time before the moves are happening in the market, the explosive moves. They're identifying where the setups are coming from, the inside bars, scanners, etc. So they've gone ahead and kind of committed to the lifetime or annual or the ghost board, and I'm just doing this as an extra perk for them, right? So don't feel left out, and that's something I just wanted to address as well here just one time. And like I said, I'll jump into the setups for next week once I'm done reading this chat here. Appreciate it, Cody. Nice, Pally. Yeah, that's the point, man. I'm not here adding something new every week. It's honestly been the same thing, but it's amazing. Every single week, I'm seeing more and more people kind of understand it. They're understanding the markets and they're understanding where the moves are coming from, which has been the main goal as well for Gold Sport is to kind of bridge that gap between retail traders and Wall Street traders. And a lot of you guys are getting on that level as to trading exactly what Wall Street is trading, and that's honestly a huge step towards success, at least long-term success. Yeah, yeah, Jojo, that's right. AJ, no. When Market Tide shows those prices on the right or left side for the SPY, that's just the SPY price range. So you really don't need to look at the axes there. You can just look at the actual premium. Yeah, no worries. Appreciate that, Louis. Appreciate the feedback. Appreciate all the feedback, guys. Really do. I'll jump into the stream here on the actual setups for next week. So you know what? Let me start off by doing this. Okay, you guys should be able to see my dashboard right now. And let's bring up the scanner. I'll just go back on the scanner page. Okay, here's the inside bars on the daily. We have a Netflix triple inside bar close. Really, really rare setup. And I'm not gonna keep flipping back and forth right now. Let me just cover the setups here and then we'll look at trading view. So here's Netflix. I'm gonna cover that daily. And let's go on the weekly. A lot of weekly candle closes on the weekly time frame here for the inside bars. And we're gonna take a look at some of these as well. Let's look at monthly here. Okay. All right. We'll cover some of these setups as well. And I am liking a few setups that I want to cover into next week. So I'm just looking through the scanner list right now as to what's consolidating what's inside bar. And we're going to cover the setups here. But I just realized that I forgot to cover something really important, and that's the Tesla trade from Friday. And that's a really good example of the strat, the flow, and just waiting for that expansion to, or sorry, that consolidation to expansion. So let me just bring that up on the stream here so we can look at it together. All right, here it is. This is the week, or sorry, let me go on the weekly for Tesla. Monthly. So the monthly I've been talking about for a while. You guys know this already, but the monthly does have a double inside bar for Tesla. It's consolidating, it's building a rare setup on the monthly time frame. And you guys all know, I don't have to say this, but you guys know that Tesla, I'm bullish on Tesla. I'm looking for 400 plus. I don't know how many times I've said this, but I'm looking for breakouts on Tesla on the monthly time frame. I think we're going back to 400. So that's why I've been keeping focus on this Tesla, and especially when we have flow and daily inside bars. So on Thursday when I said that all the individuals and almost all the individuals and all the indexes have an inside bar close on the daily time frame, we can see that consolidation on the daily time frame happening right here, right? So I also been given warnings against Tesla. So I said even though I am bullish on Tesla, under 330 we're not looking for longs, right? So we came back under 330 from that Tuesday drop on the market, and we were not looking at the setup at all. We're not interested in it when it's doing this. We see this inside bar close, and that's what's getting our interest. Another key thing is that I have mentioned it in the on the week as well, is that Tesla likely is to run on Friday. That's what it typically does. It likes to make us run on Friday. I said it before. I don't know how to explain it or the exact reason, but that's just something you learn from the personality of the stock when you trade it for a long time, and you can pick up on things like that. So you guys already know that Tesla does like to make us move on Friday. So we mark out that inside bar low and high on Thursday. I only marked the low, or sorry, I only marked the high. Let me mark the low. So there's a high and there's a low. So since it's a daily time frame, you guys know you can use the 5 minute time frame and look for that confirmation to hold right above. So let me go back on the 5 minute time frame. So here's Friday market open right here. For the first 10 15 minutes, you really don't have to do anything. You're looking for Tesla to break the inside bar high. You really need to be patient and just calm and just wait for that 5 minute close above. So we got the 5 minute close above here at 9:45, and we see the flow coming in as well. So I'm gonna pull up the flow. This part right here is one of the main important things that I wanted to discuss from Friday as well. The Tesla flow, the bullish activity on the flow. I will turn on the golden in just a second here, but look at the repeat activities that came in on Tesla. So even if you missed, so this one right here, the first repeat call that came in on Tesla for the 0 day 330 strike calls for 99 cents. If you missed that flow that came in, and if you missed that 5 minute close above that trigger that we're looking at for the daily time frame, if you missed those things, that's fine because there were a bunch of other trade alerts that came in from the flow. So strong activity on Tesla, and I posted these for you guys in the chat, and I talked about it on the voice chat. You guys remember I talked about that 3.1 million buyer, right? I still remember exactly how much he put in because that was a significant trade. And let's pull it up here, right here, 3.1 million buyer that came into the 350 strike calls for the September, and they got paid out huge. I think what was it? Let me see exactly what it was. Yeah, 33% on a 3.1 million position that was for September 12 expiration. So huge trade put on there by someone. It actually was more than 3.1 million. That's just that one order I saw. But I later saw the golden activity and I added it up, and it was actually about a $12 million position that came in. But still, really significant trade there by one of these traders that came in and swept up these Tesla calls. But main point I'm trying to make here is that daily inside bar breakout on Tesla, followed by the volume. So We didn't see this on Thursday. We didn't see this on Wednesday, right? We're seeing this on Friday. The insane bullish activity on Friday is coming into Tesla when it's giving us that strat based breakout on the daily time frame, right? We got the 5 minute close above. We're not coming back below that trigger, and we're getting these calls slamming onto 0 day positions next week, 2 weeks out, whole bunch of stuff, but all bullish activity. So I wanted to bring this up here because it's crazy. And one thing I had here on the weekly, yeah, here it is. I'll put it back on my trading view, but here's what I had for the flow coming in on Friday. So same thing you're seeing on the GoSport dashboard. This is the actual app. So if you don't have the app yet, I'll download it, but you get these flow alerts right away on your phone, and you really have no reason to miss this activity. So you don't even need me to get onto the Ghost or on the Discord and tell you guys on the voice chat there's flow coming into Tesla. I don't need to get onto the chat and tag everyone and tell everyone there's a 3.1 million buyer because I'll remind you guys right now, these are all things I'm doing extra. GoSport is an options data platform. There's really no need for me to get onto the voice chat every single day or tag you guys in the flow because I've designed it in a way to give you guys that information. All these things I'm doing is just an extra step I'm doing because I really do have a huge passion for trading and I like to help everyone else. So I just share my stuff here. But I'm reminding you guys there's really no need for the voice chat. There's no need for me to be there and even doing these webinars here as well. So I'm just letting you guys know that these are all things I do extra. But I'm just bringing up this flow as well, is that it came into your phone right away as soon as that Tesla 330 strike calls, 335, all these things started hitting. All the flows hitting onto your phone right away, onto your alerts, and you can pull up the chart. You can see what's going on. Okay, I see the daily inside bar is breaking out. Ghost has mentioned this as a top watch setup for a breakout, and we can see that close above 324, and we're hitting the weekly targets above. So every single target here was hit, and you guys know how to get the targets, right? I tell you guys the daily break. You take the previous weekly high, or sorry, previous daily high, whatever the candle time frame you're on, and the one before that as well, and look at that, perfectly to the target. So great webinar here. I think a lot of you guys should be able to use this information. I have the recording as well, and I'll post that for you guys. But real quick before I end the webinar is the setup for next week, right? That's what you guys are waiting for. So let's break it up here, and that's going to be Tesla. So Tesla is still consolidating on the monthly time frame, still a double inside bar breakout right now. It's still below that high, below 340, but we're right at the level 340.45 or 340.55. And I'm looking for a breakout on Tesla above that for next week. So above 340.55, I'm looking at Tesla to break into the 360s, and above that, I have 400, 399. You can see here, and the reason I'm getting this 399 level is because you can see from the weekly time frame, I'm just using that weekly high, and that's coming up here. Or sorry, the monthly time frame. I'm getting the monthly highs, and I'm just going back because it is a monthly setup, monthly double and sidebar setup. So I'm just taking the monthly highs, and I'm going up here for that 399 target on Tesla. Ton of bullish flow coming into the name as well. So I do really like this setup, and it's seasonality wise as well. I do really like Tesla. And another setup that I do really like for next week is Netflix. So triple inside bar. We've only been dealing with double inside bars, and those are rare in itself. But we just got an unusual case here, which is triple inside bar. I've seen them happen in the market before. I don't think I've seen one in 2025 yet, but we have a triple inside bar here. So put your focus on this Netflix as well, as it is setting up for an explosive move. I saw a bunch of you guys getting chopped up in it this whole week and letting me know it's a piece of shit stock. That's that's fine. Hopefully after this webinar, you guys are able to identify the consolidation and you guys are avoiding these trades, because if you did trade Netflix this week, you are the reason why it was consolidated, or you are the one of the reasons that the options traders or market makers, they got paid for that week. That consolidation, you funded it for them. And next week when it breaks out, you'll probably miss it because you're calling it a piece of shit. You don't want to trade it again, and you'll probably miss the move when it happens. But hopefully after this webinar, you guys are able to identify the consolidation, flip to expansion, and able to profit off that move alone. Sorry, I'm seeing a bunch of tags in the voice or in the stage chat. Let me just read it. What's the criteria for Flow to get on the Flow AI list? So the criteria is pretty it's seller proof, I would say. So you really don't have to worry about, hey, do I need to double check, are these buyers coming in? If you see flow that's coming in and it's tagged as repeat activity on the Flow AI, it's already done its check. So it's a bunch of above ask, at the ask strikes coming in for a ticker in a short window. And then obviously there's other criteria involved as well, but it does go through a pretty complex criteria to make it to the Flow AI, especially something that hits him multiple times. I understand if something comes up once and there's no daily setup, there's nothing setting up there. That's fine. It can just be a bunch of buyers. It can even be a Twitter pump, right? Someone with a huge following on Twitter posts a ticker and everyone's buying into that strike, and it can trigger one of these alerts. I've seen it happen before, but majority of the times when you see a bunch of different activity coming in, and especially if you look into the golden activity, and if you see they're buying with millions of dollars, like the $3.1 million order or the $5.4 million order, if you see stuff like this, it's real institutions, real whales buying, and there's huge positions coming into this. Airman, I all right, I won't put you on blast there, but double inside bar. You know what? I'm not even gonna answer that question. Triple inside bar is it bearish? It's not triggered either side. We have triggers on both sides, the inside bar high and inside bar low, and we're just looking for the break of either side and a confirmation, guys. That's the whole point of this webinar. We want to wait for the break and confirmation, and then we can look at if it's bullish or bearish. But while it's consolidating, it's not doing nothing. Yeah, I'm neither bullish or bearish on Netflix, guys. I have no bias on Netflix, and that's the main point of this whole strategy as well. Is you don't need a bias. Whichever side it breaks, it'll help you. It's fine, guys. All good, Spence. All good. No, I know it's completely new. I know it can be a little confusing. Definitely understand. If you guys have other questions, feel free to tag me in the chats. Don't waste too much of your weekend time. I have a few things planned as well. I actually have a wedding in the family, close family, so I got to go do some things now. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. And yeah, let's crush it again this week. I think there's a bunch of great setups coming in for the market, especially after what happened last week. We finally got some drawdown. Happy to be part of that drawdown and part of that bearish move in the market. But I think that downside move really did help set up some of these setups for explosive moves coming into the next few weeks, especially next week. So great setups coming. Take some time this weekend if you need to review some of the things I put down. Honestly, one of the main things you can get is just putting in that extra time. And I said it recently as well. I don't know if it was on the voice chat or in the annual and lifetime users webinar, but one of the main things is that I didn't need someone to come and tell me to spend overtime or stay up late nights to watch these videos, do this. And honestly, these webinars, I'm saying it is extra, but all the stuff I'm putting down here, that information is already out there on the web. If you did enough research, you would be able to kind of pick up that information and put it together as well, kind of just like how I did. But hopefully this makes it a little bit easier. But I'm just kind of saying that don't wait on someone to push you. And even though I have been pushing a lot of people over the last few weeks, I am going to be stopping that and leaving you guys to figure this out on your own based off the recordings and what I've been covering over the last few weeks. Appreciate the feedback, guys. Hopefully you all have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. I'll catch you guys Monday morning planning.